Hey and welcome back to a new video. It's been a while that we started the MoRa project that's in the back, and it's embarrassing, you know, I still didn't find the time to complete the project, and that's what I want to do finally today. So add all the wiring, tubing. I bought a small mini PC because I want to use it for controlling the MoRa, also for like IQ because of the fans and all that. To be finally able to use it. I'm still using the small MoRa that's sitting underneath my desk, so that's a 360mm version, and now I want to finally switch over to the new one. Thermal Grizzly Duronaut is our new high-end thermal paste and the successor of Cryonaut. It's even better performing, it is much easier to apply, it is cheaper, and it's much more durable. That's where the name comes from. Especially if you're now maybe considering to buy a new PC, then I would highly recommend that you're looking into this thermal paste. So let's continue with this video. But first, a summary of what we did so far. That's also how my studio looks like, just a little bit behind the scenes. And what we did last time is assemble everything. So we have 16 140mm fans on this MoRa, and we mounted it to the wall. You can see there's a small gap behind, so the hot air can exit to the back. And what we also have is 3 D5 pumps that are mounted to the left side. So those are like water cool D5 versions, and we have a reservoir that is sitting on top. And what I now have to do is like add all the tubing, the wiring. You can see the wiring hanging down. So those are the Corsair controllers for the 16 fans. And here you can see my current MoRa that I'm using for all the testing. And I just want, tubing going down somewhere here in some way, and then just, add some way that we can control the fans and also pump speed and everything. So that's what I want to figure out. I wasn't quite sure after the last video how I want to approach this in terms of controlling like the fans and pump speed and stuff like flow rate. So I thought I will just buy a mini PC. I bought one of the cheapest ones I could find. Still have to add like memory and SSD to this, and also a PSU that I also want to use to power the PC. So I don't want to use like an external PSU for this, but then somehow modify this and solder a little bit so we can power both the MoRa and also the mini PC with this PSU that I will probably somehow mount to the wall. So a lot of things, I just want to see how it goes. Like, it's not perfectly planned maybe. For the connection from the MoRa to the PC, we would use this MoRa link that I showed also in the last video. And that's one of the reasons why we need a normal ATX PSU. It requires dual 6-pin, same as the Corsair controllers, and that's why I need a PSU anyway. And that's why I want to combine the MoRa power supply with the power supply of the mini PC, and also why I can't just rely on the PSU of the mini PC. That just wouldn't work with the amount of power that's required for this. That's our mini PC. The requirements for this were just that it has to be working and run Windows. That's why I just got the cheapest and just quickly available one with the i3-1250U 2P cores. As I said, just has to run. With the cover removed, we can see that memory and SSD are missing. I also bought very cheap stuff, so dual 8GB kit and just a simple 500GB SSD. Meanwhile, I got the mini PC out of its case. There's not much on there anyway, and I installed Windows already. And what I want to do now is figure out some part of the voltage supply, because the small PSU is delivering 19 volts DC with 65 watts, and we will have to somehow figure out where we attach the ATX power supply that is delivering 12 volts. I would assume that there is a simple DC-DC 19 volt to 12 volt on the input side, but could be anything else. But I would be surprised if something else than 12 volt is used on this PC. So I will try to figure out at which spot I can deliver the 12 volt DC for the power supply, and then hopefully just solder something to it, and then this way use the ATX power supply. It's very simple. There's only a small heatsink for the CPU, and on the back side, that's the area we already saw. And here is the voltage supply. And on this small point, as expected, we have 19 volt input voltage. Turns out that the device is indeed mostly running with 19 volts. For example, the power stage that is for CPU voltage supply is also getting 19 volt input voltage, which means that I will just have to try to see if it's possible to lower this to 12 volts overall, which could be possible unless there is some under voltage protection. That is also plausible that this kind of thing exists, that if you just hook up 12 volts that it doesn't start. If it starts and we run a lower voltage, it would also mean that we would increase the current overall on the entire PCB in the same relation. So that would be the downside. But first I will just try if it even starts. I will first try this with a normal external PSU, set this to 18 volts, hooked up the ground to this pin on the side, and then I will have to add the 18 volts onto the small pin here. Be careful that it doesn't touch anything else. It's nothing I would do on a desktop PC, but with this tiny load on a mini PC should theoretically work. So with 18 volts, an external PSU just works without any issues. That was kind of expected. There's always obviously some sort of tolerance that it wouldn't directly not work with like 18 volts instead of 19, but yeah, it will be a question if it works if I lower this further. The good thing is we can also directly monitor the current and the power consumption that is resulting. Just waiting for the Windows updates to be complete, and then I will switch it off, to tune the voltage down to maybe like 15 volts and try again, and then to 12 volts eventually. 50 volts, no problem. Obviously the current increased a little bit, but I think we can switch to 12 volts. It's powering up, so that's at least something. Yep, also starts without issues with 12 volts. Great. But even with the PC working, we're still running stuff out of spec with decreasing the voltage from 19 to 12 volts. We are increasing the current in the same relation, so about 50 to 60% higher current on the PCB and some of the components. But since I'm not aiming to run this under load, just in Windows idle to monitor or control some of the fans, for example, I think it should be okay. And what I want to do now is prepare the PSU. I will have to use two switches in the end, one switch to switch on the PSU, and with this also the MoRa or the pump. So I can use the MoRa and the pump without running the PC if I want to. But if I want to run the fans, then I will have to switch on the PC as well. I will now take one of the EPS cables that is usually for CPU power supply. I will remove all the cables except for two, so one ground and one times 12 volt, and then hook it up to the power input. And this is going to be my small adapter cable. I messed around with the 24-pin cable a little bit and took it apart. I first checked which of the pins is for power on, traced it back to the secondary connector, that's this one, and then checked which one is power on and bridged it to one of the ground pins. I also wanted to take out the unnecessary pins, but figured out I just can't get in there. It's a little bit too tight and I don't have the tool for it, so I will just leave it in there. Should be okay. And whenever I plug this in and flip the switch, then the PSU should start. And it would look like that. Perfect. Exactly what I expected. And with this, we should be able to get the PC going. We just have to connect the PSU with our EPS to DC power adapter to 12 volt, hook this up to the PC, and then see if everything starts. With this, everything is connected. We will first switch on the PSU. And then the PC. And it's working as intended, as planned. That's great. Happy that this worked out. Next thing for me to test is IQ and to see if the controllers work on a mini PC. The mini PC doesn't have the needed or required USB 2.0 internal header. That's why I got those simple adapter cables of USB-A to this pin out. And with this, I should be able to connect them together and still have the controllers hooked up to the mini PC. On a later stage, when wiring it to the wall, I will make this more elegant because the controller just has a simple micro USB and I just have to order the micro USB to USB-A cable with the exact length that I need, and then it will look a bit nicer without the adapter cable. But for now, just for the testing and setting this up, it's fine with the adapter. I connected these to the PSU over, or I will connect these to the PSU over PCIe, and then should be able to test them. Looks a bit chaotic, but should be okay to test. I hooked up the two controllers to everything and also added two QX fans for the testing. I couldn't find another IQ link cable, so I thought I will try if I can directly hook up the controller to the fan. That's also something to test and see if this just works out. So it's working as intended, also without the PC. And I'm also almost done running the firmware updates. Meanwhile, a few days later, I made this piece of aluminium as a small wall mount for the PSU and for the mini PC. For the mini PC, I already have this small mounting bracket attached. PSU will go here, and it will go on the wall like that, with some standoffs on the corners, so I can still add another cover on top later to cover whatever is sitting underneath. So what looks like some sort of ventilation cutouts, it's actually just holes that I can add some zip ties for attaching the cables and, for example, the IQ Link controllers. And for this I also added 4 additional standoffs to the wall already underneath the MoRa. And this is the current state with the mini PC attached to the PSU, so that would already work. The only thing is that I'm still missing some cables, waiting for another delivery, and also of the delivery of a small screen. Another 2 days later, I finally received all the cables and accessories that I still needed to complete this. Already did some more steps of the wiring, for example, the fans together with the MoRa power cable going downwards, added the 2 IQ Link controllers, and I'm now working on the cable management. To have easier control with the mini PC, I bought this just €70 external HDMI monitor from Amazon, and I want to mount this on top on the wall as well. I'm quite happy with the current state, even though there will still be a cover on top, but all the wiring is done for the moment. So everything like the screen is connected. I added an external power button because if I flip the switch on the PSU, the mini PC doesn't automatically turn on. Only the fans will get power and so do the pumps. So I can use it without the mini PC, and only if I want to control something like RGB, then I will have to use the mini PC, and for that I have the external power button. For the moment, I will also unplug the pumps down there, so I'm able to test everything without the pumps running because they would run dry. It's currently not filled, which means that I will afterwards will have to do the tubing, so we are able to fill up the MoRa and then test everything. But for now, I just want to see if everything works out with the external monitor and the mini PC and all that. So we'll just try what happens. Half of the fans are not spinning, not sure why exactly, or if that's because of IQ Link and I might need the PC. So power button seems to be working. Small screen is also working, as you can see. I will first try to check over IQ if there's something I still have to set up or if I maybe accidentally removed a cable somewhere. Again, a few days later, but I made good progress on this. So the first issue I had was that only the left portion of the fans were running. That was because I accidentally pulled out the bottom of the IQ Link cable from this fan. And I couldn't really see it. So it was only out by like 1 or 2 millimeters, and that probably happened during the cable management. So that was kind of easy to fix. Then the second problem was a bit more tricky to debug because I was able to find both of the IQ Link controllers in IQ, but I couldn't find a single fan in there, which was quite odd. So I tried a lot of things for debugging software-wise, but it didn't work out. First I thought, okay, I can find both controllers, so it can't be the connection to these, right? But then I thought, I will just try it anyway with the USB connection. So the small mini PC has USB on the left and USB on the right. And previously I had both controllers connected to the left side here. And then I just tried connecting one of the controllers to the right and one of the controllers to the left, and then it suddenly worked. So it was some kind of a USB conflict. Not quite sure what caused this, but I'm happy that it's finally running. In the meantime, I made those small tube holders from aluminium, and that's because I want to have the tubing nice and tidy, like exiting from the back of the MoRa all the way through here and then going down to the table, and just to fix them on a wall, I thought it would look quite nice using something like this. And I also was able to finish this in the meantime, which is just the cover for everything that is sitting underneath. So for the mini PC and the PSU, added some small slots in the side for a little bit of ventilation for the mini PC and the PSU, added 4 holes, so I will be able to fix it. And that's basically the final result with the wiring you can see with the cover on top. I thought of adding another cover on here, but it was a bit too complex with bending the aluminum sheet on a third side, so I just decided to do it that way. I think it still looks fine. And now it's finally time for the tubing. And for the entire tubing, I can also now use our own water cooling fittings. I'm not sure if you realize that, but at Thermal Grizzly, we now also have the Delta-made water cooling fittings. For example, in this quite smart rotary fitting, because you can just remove the cover, and then you take a hex key and rotate the inner part. And with this, can screw it in any position without having to rotate the entire fitting. And of course, a standard soft tube fitting, in this case for 1610 soft tubing, because that's what I'm going to use. Obviously, we also have this for hard tubing, but for my case, this will be just fine. So just tighten with the hex key, then you can rotate it in any direction as you need it. I think I will add another like 1 or 2 holders down there, but apart from that, it's looking pretty much as I expected. I'm finally done with most of the work. I have all the tubing on the wall with those wall mounts. We have quick connect fittings at the end right here, and then here I have the rest of the tubing. It's another 3 meters with also quick connect fittings on the other end, so I can attach it to like CPU blocks and GPU blocks, and also an aqua computer flow sensor built in, so I can check like temperature and also the flow rate. The fans are now set in IQ to 600 RPM for all of the fans, so that will be a static fixed fan speed. It's a fan speed where I just can't hear the fans, just if I'm really, really close to them, but on the side you can still feel a decent airflow. And what I want to do now is also get some baseline numbers of my old MoRa, the tiny one here under the desk, so we can also get some comparison numbers. And for the comparison, I want to run this 5090 together with the 9950X 3D. So both of them under load, I would estimate something between 700 and 800 watts of heat. Everything is running. I'm running Firmark on the GPU and Cinebench on the CPU to give it some decent load. And what we obviously want to check is the temperature of the water, which is after about 13 minutes, about 34 degrees Celsius. And we have a flow rate of about 122 liters per hour. And just additional information, I have a room temperature currently of 25 degrees Celsius because I didn't switch on the AC. Now after 20 minutes, it didn't really increase further. We have a 34.4 degrees Celsius water temperature. And on our GPU, we have a temperature between like 53 and 54 degrees Celsius, which is pretty much a delta of 19 to 20 Kelvin or degrees Celsius between the water temperature and the GPU temperature. So we can finally proceed and fill the MoRa. Everything is done when it comes to wiring and tubing, so connected to the quick connect fittings, also connected to our test setup, which will not be running for the filling procedure. I will just run the water through, and I have 5 liters of DP Ultra. I have a bit more if we need more, but I think 5 liters should just work out. Finally, the big moment, first time adding water to the loop. Pumps are not spinning yet. I just want to fill the reservoir and as much as possible first. With this, the reservoir is filled as much as I could, and I will now plug in the pumps and see what happens. Was empty quite quickly, so I have to just fill it up again and then plug it in again. Okay. I think by now I had to fill up the reservoir 5 times, which also kind of makes sense. We have 12 meters of tubing in total, then the big MoRa, the reservoir, the pumps and the setup, so yeah. Finally, but I have to open up the second jar because there's 5 liters of water inside now, or like DP Ultra. It's so nice that I'm finally able to use this. It's so super quiet. I mean, the other MoRa was also already super quiet because like the fans spinning low RPM and the only thing you can barely hear is the pump. But the setup is now running over the MoRa 600. And same as previous, just running Firmark and also Cinebench right now. One thing that obviously changed is the flow rate, which is now over 200 liters per hour because we're running 3 D5 pumps. and the temperature dropped to almost 32 degrees Celsius. And that's after almost 20 minutes under load. Now after the 20 minutes of load, the temperature decreased a little bit. We're now seeing 50 degrees Celsius under load, which is about 4 degrees Celsius lower than previously, again after running this for 20 minutes. The 4 degrees Celsius lower temperature on the GPU are a mix of the 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower water temperature between the two MoRas and also the higher flow rate. So that's how I assume I'm getting the 4 degrees Celsius lower temperature. And it also shows what's kind of possible with a normal radiator setup without going towards a chiller, but with ambient temperature that's not too cold, like here, 24-25 degrees Celsius. This is what I think is kind of realistic with high CPU load, high GPU load, maybe 700, 800 watts we're pumping in the system with a MoRa, then seeing like 32 degrees Celsius on the big MoRa when it comes to the water temperature and 34 on the small MoRa. I think that's what's kind of expected. This GPU is also running liquid metal, so it's probably also the max you can do under normal conditions. So a good water block with liquid metal on top, good flow rate and everything. And I'm seeing about 50 degrees Celsius under load. Obviously, there's more possible if you go down the route, for example, with a chiller, but it's something I didn't want to do, especially when it comes to the noise level. Like testing my stuff, I want to have an ambient noise level that's really low, so it doesn't disturb or influence anything of what I'm testing, and that's why I love the MoRa so much. And 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius lower water temperature might not sound that much, but you have to keep in mind that the small MoRa is already like 360 radiators. So that's already quite a lot of surface area. And then being able to go down by even like 2 degrees Celsius, still without running a chiller, I think that's absolutely worth it, depending on your perspective, at least for me, without having to go with a chiller. I think this is pretty impressive, but obviously at a high cost. If you think of the entire setup and everything that went into this, then it's definitely a high cost, although high effort. It took me quite some time to get this thing running in exactly this way, how I wanted to. But in a normal setup, this would obviously be easier without having to attach like a secondary system and screen and all that. Then things might be easier for you at home if you would just attach a MoRa to a normal system. I hope you still enjoyed this video. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.